So, on two different interviews, Antonio Brown talked about his career. And it strikes me that both of them scream something to me. And whether it's LeBron, or Anthony Davis, or Kyrie Irving, or Kevin Durant, Antonio Brown, there's this need for superstar players to take control of their own career. Now, look, I didn't love interviewing Derek Jeter every time we had Derek Jeter on. I've had Derek Jeter on, and you know what Derek Jeter says? Nothing. He is literally the least interesting human being to have on a radio or television interview on earth. Getting something out of Derek Jeter would have been great, would have been like a life's accomplishment. Man, I got Derek Jeter to say something interesting. And the juxtaposition of that Derek Jeter with the real Derek Jeter is obviously the polar opposites, right? Because though Derek Jeter is good looking, is rich, and was a great baseball player, you don't pull the litany of ladies before he got married without having a little bit something more to your game than, hey, he's just good looking, rich, and he plays shortstop for the Yankees, right? He's got to have some game, some personality. He can't be fence post boring. But he was in every interview. But there was a logic behind it. The logic behind it. And the logic is, hey, saying nothing is a lot better than saying too much. Because when you say too much, you say dumb things. We have reached the point where Antonio Brown has now spoken so often about what he thinks that we're incredibly turned off by it. This is what happens. The guy who we thought listen, I don't think he should have threatened to sit out the last game of the season, but I can kind of see that Big Ben and Mike Tomlin and the contract and now I have zero sympathy. First, there's the visual of it. In and of itself, you want to dye your mustache blonde? All right. I've never been a dye it blonde guy, but all right. Have some fun. I tell my son all the time, should you have a mohawk? Probably he does not have a mohawk currently, but should you have a line in your hair? Should you try and shave it up differently, get faded differently? I don't know, but there's going to become a point in time where you might not have as much hair as you used to have, and you won't be able to do it. So go for it. The difference in a good haircut and a bad haircut is 2 weeks. It goes back. But when you're going to sit down and conduct interviews and explain to people that you're the adult in the room, not the kid in your room, you might not want to have a dyed yellow mustache. I'm not crazy. Call me crazy. And you might not want to say things like this.
Bro, listen, I don't even have to play football if I don't want, bro. I don't even need the game. You know what I'm saying? I don't need to prove nothing to anyone. If they want to play, they're going to play by my rules. If not, I don't need to play.
Listen, I'm not going to sit here and tell you I know everything about football culture because I played football for 7 years of my life. I did not play football in college. I did not play football professionally. But I do know this enough about football. Football does not play by any one player's rules. They don't bow to the whim of a wide receiver. Right? That's not the way it works here. Okay? You're the employee. We tell you when to show up. We tell you when you can go home. Then we tell you when to show up the next day and when you can go home. We tell you when the games are. When you need to be there. When you go home. You play our way. This is the way it works to be an employee. And it just strikes me as I understand you want to be your own voice. You are tired of being held back, but sometimes it's for your own good. There's an expression or a saying in sports radio and sports television, right? Look, we all have things we say we'd like to take back. And we all sit there and go like, well, you talk enough, you're going to say something stupid, right? And that's for people who speak for a living. We're going to say something stupid. We're going to make a mistake. We're going to be tired one day. We're going to be grouchy one day. Or we're just going to be misinformed on something and get something jumbled in our mind and misspeak and use bad syntax. Like, it's going to happen. If you talk enough, you're going to say something stupid. And that's for people who do it for a living. What do you think happens for the athlete? In Antonio Brown's own mind, he's taking control of his own career. He's making the decisions. He feels empowered because he's in a room full of guys that are sitting there nodding their head going, yeah, if you're going to play by your rules. And the NFL's sitting there going like, yeah, no, that's not really the way it works. You want a guaranteed contract, somehow a longer-term guaranteed contract. You want to play with a good quarterback, all right? Well, that cuts off like half the league. You got to play with a strong-willed head coach. That cuts off half of those remaining teams. You want guaranteed money. That cuts off half of those. Oh, and you want to play by your rules and your way and, like, pass. This strikes me as a little bit of the LeBron problem. When I speak to high school kids and college kids, and look, I on my own level, whatever, I've made the same mistakes that other people make. Try to tell other people, like, look, I did this. You don't have to do this. But it's something I call, like, be the cool. Like, you don't have to be cool because when you're a great wide receiver, you already are cool. He didn't have to dye his mustache. He's already Antonio Brown. He's already rich. He's already great. Like, you don't need any more attention. You already naturally get the attention because you're Antonio Brown. The guy who needs to dye his mustache is the guy who I've never heard of before. Because then he becomes dyed mustache guy. Like, oh, the dyed mustache guy. I wonder if he can play. Now it's like Antonio Brown screaming for attention. It's the same thing as LeBron. The weird viral posts, showing up at Laker games when you're hurt like 5 minutes late so you get a standing ovation. That's just a search for attention. That's all it is. LeBron doesn't need to because he's already cool. But this is what happens with women. We don't just want 9s or 10s. You want a 9 or a 10 that thinks she's a 7. Not a 7 that thinks she's a 10. Or you could do the 5 2s equal a 10. You could do that as well. That's fine. However you want to work it. The point is that Antonio Brown, in his desire to take a control of his own narrative, has told us all we need to know. A complete and total lack of self-awareness. That's the only way you can express his most recent interviews. Looking the camera in the eye and saying, how can you call us 52 children? Right? We're a bunch of grown men like, I don't know how to tell you this, dude, but you have a dyed blonde mustache. It's kind of hard to take you seriously as the grown-up in the room when you got a dyed and you want to be known as Mr. Big Chest. Like, that's not really the things that adults do. Adults say, like, I'm Antonio Brown. I'm a first ballot Hall of Famer. I've been the elite wide receiver for 9 years. I show up on time. I do the right thing. I play hard. I'm a good father. I'm a good player. And I'm ready for the next adventure. That sounds like an adult. Man, I play however I want to play. With a dyed mustache, hair all astray, and blaming everybody else for all of your problems. Adults point here to themselves. You know, I could have handled it better. I should have showed up on time on that last week of the season. I should have communicated better with Mike Tomlin. Should have communicated with Ben Roethlisberger. That's on me. Children point to other people. Children say, I'm an adult, even though they look like kids. It's Mike Tomlin's fault. It's Ben Roethlisberger's fault. It's the general manager's fault. It's the Steelers' fault. It's the NFL's fault. You got to play my way. Meanwhile, you wonder why we think, or your general manager says, there's 52 kids and one adult, because the guy screaming that he's an adult is the one acting like a child. Antonio Brown has gone from the guy who I kind of bought into getting a bit of a bad rap. He's been productive. He showed up on Sundays. He's been tough. Sure, he was well compensated, but it's actually a non-guaranteed deal this year. But all of that equity, all of that sympathy, it's all gone. Now he can form a league of his own, play Madden, play in Canada. In an effort to take over his own narrative, he has. He's controlled it. He's driven that train off its tracks.